In this training video, we're going to cover all the steps for the QuickTest for BVD-PI testing. The QuickTest allows you to quickly and accurately determine the BVD-PI status on your operation. There are a few moving parts with the QuickTest, but don't be intimidated, because once you learn it, this is the most streamlined test on the market for high volume testing, allowing you to test 50 to 150 animals within 30-45 minutes. Upon your first order of the QuickTest, you will receive a box of setup equipment. The setup equipment is a one-time purchase of all the tools required to run the test. Pretty much everything in here is reusable and should last you years. So now let's get started. Alright, so first off, we have our sampling trays. There are 96 holes in this for 96 vials. Put your vials in here while you're sampling next to the chute. These things will hold the vials tight and keep them from falling out. This setup tray, honestly completely optional, but there are major benefits to using it that we'll go over to later in the video. This tray you use during the actual process of testing. We have the pipette tips for the pipettes, the box that they go in. Here are your two pipetters. We have a multi-channel, single channel, and a multi-channel. Vaccine gun, this is for putting extraction buffer in the vials. The media bottle for mixing the extraction buffer. And in this red bag, you have reagent reservoirs, plate covers, and your ear notcher. If you order just one kit to start off, it will be in this box. Now, these kits do need to be refrigerated. Sometimes, especially during the warmer months of the year, this reagent might arrive at room temperature or feel warm to the touch. That is totally fine. We have a 3-day exemption on temperature, so even if you leave it out overnight, it doesn't harm the kit. First thing we're going to do is prep the vials for sampling or storage. As I said, you're going to receive 3 of these white styrofoam sample trays. These snugly hold the vials in place just so you're less likely to drop them while you're processing or moving them around. They're going to show up like this, and what I recommend you do is just punch all these out and get them ready for the vials. Now that the trays are prepped and ready, we're going to go ahead and make the extraction buffer that goes into the vials for long-term storage. Now we're going to make our extraction buffer that goes into the vials. The ear notch sits in the extraction buffer for 45 minutes, and the extraction buffer essentially pulls out more detectable BVD antigen to give you clearer results on the test. To make the extraction buffer, you need 500 mils of distilled or purified water. Now, if you're in a pinch, most tap water works. Depends on how clean the pipes are, source of the water. I would only recommend that if you're in an absolute pinch. On top of the distilled water, we need 1 vial of the extraction buffer powder, and then we need 350 microliters or 0.35 mils of propylene. All right, let's get our pipette tips prepped for this. They are going to come wrapped like that. There are enough pipette tips to run every test. That comes with the kit. So we're going to take off that first rack, and we're going to put it in this box. All right, so to make our extraction buffer, we're going to put 1 vial of this powder into 500 mils of the distilled water. And you're going to shake for about 5 or 10 minutes. You don't have to shake the whole time. We're just going to get this mixed up. And the main thing you want to check for is just kind of lift it up and see if there's any solids here on the bottom. If there is, you can stop, you can let it soak, you can do other stuff, but we're going to make sure this is thoroughly dissolved and mixed. All right, now that that has mixed in, we are going to add our propylene. Again, we need 350 microliters or 0.35 mils. So you're going to take your single channel pipette and you can turn this dial, and you can't get 350 microliters in this tip, but what we can do is switch this to 175 and do it twice. So we're going to take the tip. We're going to make sure the tip is into the solution but not pressed up against the bottom of the vial. And this stuff's a little thick, so you kind of have to give it a second. So there's 175. We're going to press down. All right, now we're going to do it again. You'll notice on this pipette, whenever you push down, you're going to hit a point of resistance, and you can go past it and then it completely stops. There's never any reason to go past that point of resistance. You just push down to where you feel the resistance. Now you're good. And to dispense it, you press this little lever right here. Now we have a propylene in there. We're going to go ahead and mix it until it's thoroughly mixed in. There's enough propylene in this vial to do 2 500 ml solutions of extraction buffer. And so whenever you get done with the first one, just put this back in the kit and put it, store it in the refrigerator. This is our made up extraction buffer. Now, there are different storage times for this depending on the temperature. At room temperature, it's good for about 12 hours. In the refrigerator, it's good for up to 14 days. And if frozen, it is good on paper for 120 days. We have a lot of clients that go past that up to 2 years and they don't have any issues with it. Now, I wouldn't recommend freezing it in this bottle. A, you can crack it. B, it takes a long time to thaw whenever you're ready to use it. So what I recommend is we're just gonna fill up all of these tubes with the extraction buffer, and we're gonna put it in the freezer. That way, the morning that you need it, you just pull it out, it'll thaw in 15, 20 minutes, and you're ready to go. All right, so remember, this 500 mils of extraction buffer is enough to do 3 trays, which is 288 tests. And so what we're gonna do, just to make things easier in the future, we're gonna prime our vaccine gun. We're gonna set it to 1.5 mils. All right, now we're gonna dispense our extraction buffer into all of our tubes. So we put the extraction buffer in all the vials. We have a little bit left, but there's no reason to keep this. We're just gonna throw this away, rinse out the bottle. It's important to keep our stuff clean. We're gonna run some water through our vaccine gun, and then we'll be ready for the next step. All right, so now our samples are ready to be used immediately or put in the storage. One thing I didn't recommend is putting a couple drops of food coloring into that bottle of extraction buffer. It really does make a huge difference whenever you're testing. I would recommend green or blue. It just makes it easier to see kind of where you're at throughout the entire process. Again, to store these things, 12 hours at room temperature, 2 weeks in the fridge, or on paper, 120 days in the freezer. Again, we've had clients freeze these for up to 2 years and use them, and they haven't reported any issues. All right, since I'm not visiting any clients, we're going to use my poorly drawn cow's ear as a diagram for taking samples. So while you're processing, you're gonna have your ear notcher, and you just take a notch anywhere from the outside third of the ear. It can be either the top or the bottom, whatever your preference is. Now, you can disinfect your notcher while you're processing. It's advisable, not so much from a sample contamination standpoint, but to keep from spreading pathogen from one animal to another. And the way we recommend that is you can have up to 3, solo cups. The first one would be water. The second one would be some kind of disinfectant like Novosan. Third one will be water again. So the first water just kind of gets all the debris off. Novosan obviously disinfects. And then the third one removes excess Novosan. After you take the sample, you want to make sure, this part is important, that the sample is submerged in the fluid at the bottom. You can write the tag number either on the side or the top. Normally, whenever I do it, it's on the top. And so I'll just take the tag number, write it on top, put the ear notch, put it in the vial, close it, and then put it back into the white sample tray. All right, so we've taken our samples, they've been soaking for 45 minutes, and we converted the vials over from the white sample tray to this black setup tray. Now we're gonna notice a couple things. First off, over here is A through H, and on the bottom, 1 through 12. That corresponds with our test plates. So on this side, we have A through H, and on the bottom, we have 1 through 12. You'll notice I started in row 2, and there's an extra row here. I start in row 2, so as I'm pipetting the sample over, I can just move these to the side as I go. This just helps me keep track of where I'm at. And lastly, you'll notice there's 2 open spots here. Every time you run the test, you will need your positive control and negative control. You can either put them at the end. We've always put them at the beginning. A1 is positive control, B1 is negative control. So now that everything is set up, we are ready to pipette the sample into the tray. All right, so the cool thing about our trays is you can flip them upside down and you can push out these strips just so you can get the exact number of wells to correspond with the number of vials. Okay, so now we're gonna pipette. And
just to let you know, I've got a phone on my chest right now and kind of hard to see, so I'm going to do my best. All right, so from earlier, our pipette still set on 175 for making that extraction buffer. So what we're going to do is turn it and drop it down to 125. Again, whenever you pipette this, you're going to go down and you'll feel a point of resistance. You can go past that. There's never any reason to go past that point of resistance. You never go all the way down. All right, so we have our pipette tips here. This is where we're going to dispose of the pipette tips. You can have a trash can on the ground next to you if you want. And so we're going to start with our positive control, go down to the first point of resistance, draw up the fluid, double check, make sure there's no air bubbles. We're going to put it in A1 because that's where the positive control goes. Then we're going to move it one over. Again, this just helps us keep track of where we're at in case we get distracted. So now we're going to start on the negative control. Take this off. All right, now we're going to do the rest of the samples. Remember to remove the tip, just push down on that. Make sure there's no air bubbles. All right, so we have transferred over 125 microliters or 0.125 mils of the sample solution into the test well. Now the next step is we're going to put in 50 microliters of conjugant. So in this red bag, you'll have your reagent reservoirs, test plate cover, and that urinometer. The reagent reservoirs you get are going to be labeled conjugant TMB, plus we give you one extra. So we'll just invert this a couple times. Put it in. All right. You don't need to fill it up all the way. This we need to change. Go to 50. Now the cool thing about this multi-channel pipetter is you can do one at a time or you can do 12. Since we're not doing a full plate, if you were doing a full plate, you could do 12 and just run it like that, but we're not doing a full plate, so we're going to do it by 8s. We're going to get 8 tips on there. It's set on 50. We're going to go down to that point of resistance, drop 50 microliters, and then we're going to put it in the first row. And we'll do the second row. Then we'll do the third row. Then we'll take off that one. So where we have 3. Move it over, get 3 in there, and then boom. All right, and now we set a 20-minute timer. Allow this to incubate for 17 to 23 minutes. Now, it is recommended that you cover it with the cover plate and incubate it in the dark at room temperature. Now, I don't have anywhere to incubate it in the dark here in my kitchen, so we're just going to leave it here on the counter. While that's incubating, anything that's left over in here we can put back into the bottle as long as you don't contaminate it. So we'll do that. Rinse this out with mild soapy water. And now we are ready for the wash step. Okay, so our test plate has been incubating for 20 minutes. While that was going on, I got the wash bottle and I filled it with distilled or purified water. What I recommend you do before you get the QuickTest is just buy a couple gallons of distilled water. Keep it on hand and at room temperature. And then we have a paper towel here to tap the test plate on after we get done washing it. Now this part's going to seem very counterintuitive. You know, we spent time putting the sample in here, we put the conjugate in here. Now we're going to dump it all out and wash it. But it is how the process goes. The wash step is also probably the most common QA issue we have. Here's how I describe it. It is very easy to underwash this and get false positives. It is extremely hard to overwash this to the point where you don't get any signal. So when in doubt, wash it out. Whenever we fill these wells with distilled water, we're going to let them overflow, and we're going to do it 3 times. First step, You just dump everything out. And we get our bottle overflow all of the wells. I've got a plugged one. Okay, that was one. We're gonna do it again. 2, 3. That was the second wash, and now the third. Let those wells overflow. Makes a mess. Now we're gonna just tap it dry. Don't worry about breaking it. And now we are ready for our TMB. All right, so we got everything washed out. We're gonna get our clean reservoir, and we're going to grab our TMB reagent number 4. And we're just gonna pour it in. Again, we don't need very much because we're only doing part of a tray. We're gonna grab our multi-channel pipetter, and we're gonna turn this to 125. Remember what I said about the point of resistance? It's a little harder to feel on this multi-channel pipette, but don't ever go past it. If you push it all the way down and draw it up, you're gonna pull up between 30 and 50% more than what you need, and then you'll end up running short on these reagents. So just go down to the point of resistance, then pull up. And so now we're gonna get 8 tips on there at 125. We're gonna draw up our solution, and we're gonna put it in. Man, that was terrible. 3, putting it right there. And now we're gonna let this incubate for 10 minutes, plus or minus 3, so 7 to 13 minutes. All right, it's been 10 minutes, and now we have our results. So we see this lighter blue color change is our positive control. Always goes in A1. But if we come down here to D3, we have a positive. So on this tray, we're gonna go to D3, and animal 7292.7 is our PI. Now, I always recommend retesting any positive sample just to verify that it didn't turn positive due to technician error or some other false positive. All right, now that we got that figured out, we're just gonna leave that one to the side. The rest of these we can throw away. Our controls we're gonna put back in our test kit along with all the other reagents, and we're gonna store that in the fridge. The rest of these we'll just throw away. They can be reusable. It's a real pain in the butt, so just go ahead and toss them. These wells cannot be reused, so we'll go ahead and toss those. It is a good idea to keep a couple of these frames around, along with some of these boxes that the pipette tips go in. So that's how you run the quick test. With time, as you run it, 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, this test does get very easy and is streamlined for high volume testing. Again, personally, I can do 100 head in about 23 minutes. So